Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Digital Catapult's latest webinar on the topic of music and advertising, the future of content creation and the metaverse. So we're really delighted to host you today. My name, as I should say, is Emily Savage, and I am here on the commercial team at Digital Catapult, and our co-host for the afternoon is Max Cleary. Hi, Max.
Hi there, I'm the creative industry lead for Catapult.
Brilliant, and we'll be hearing lots more from Max later on as well. So first off, I just want to say a very warm thanks to our two partners on this event. That is the APA, the Advertising Producers Association, and the BPI, the British Phonographic Industry. So thank you ever so much, and you're going to hear more from both of those as well today. Alongside that, there are over 10 expert speakers that are going to be speaking throughout the day. So I know we have got so much to squeeze in to the next 2 hours, so I'm going to start cantering through. So just a very quick recap on the next 2 hours. As I say, you're going to hear a little bit from Max and myself. You're then going to hear from the APA. We'll then go into the first panel, and that will be focusing mainly on visual content production and the metaverse. And then we will hear a little bit more from Cassandra at the BPI. And then I will talk with my panel about audio content production and what's happening in spatial audio. And we'll wrap up then hearing a few final and new announcements from the virtual production test studio at Digital Catapult. So, first of all, let me just give a little recap as to Digital Catapult. I know some of you will know who we are. Others of you, this may be the first time you've heard from us. So Digital Catapult is the UK's leading advanced digital technology innovation centre, which is quite a mouthful, but really what it means is that we do two key things. We're here to assist the growth of the UK startup ecosystem, and by that we mean the technology startups, and we help them grow through industry and investor introductions and programs. And then secondly, we're here to work with industry to help them adopt and apply advanced digital solutions. Now, the reason we're quite special is the fact that we sit across a whole bunch of organisations that work within the UK to help grow innovation. And that goes all the way from government to startups themselves, as I mentioned, to industry, to academia, and to the investors and other catapults that are here in the UK. And we sit in a totally neutral capacity, not favouring any one particular technology or industry player, but we're here to act in that agnostic way to support anyone in the best way possible for them to apply and grow their technology. When we talk about advanced digital technology, obviously it can mean a whole myriad of things, but this is how we roughly define it. We have expertise in the 4 areas below, so future networks, immersive, which is largely where we're focused today with virtual reality, augmented reality, virtual production, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and then blockchain and distributed ledger. Bringing all of those technologies together, we see various new applications and services sitting on top of that, which are focused on digital supply chain, advanced digital infrastructure, and then visual applications, the services, the content, and a great example of that is virtual production and the metaverse. So just to wrap up on my part, and then I am going to hand over to Max. But really, this is why we consider ourselves special, and hopefully why industry as well like to work with us. And that is that we've got these expert technologists. Well over 50% of the staff within Digital Catapult are technologists, and they specialise on all of those areas I just mentioned. We also have a unique service design and innovation practice. We have this massive network of startups. So through all of our programs, we get to know hundreds and hundreds of startups. And then we deliver innovation projects and we build proof of concepts for industry, and we're really rather good at it. Finally, we've got high-tech facilities that we have in a whole number of different areas, including our 5D test beds, and then most recently, our virtual production test stage. So right now then, I am now going to hand over to Max to tell us a little bit more about how we're looking at the metaverse. Over to you, Max.
Thanks very much, Emily. So thanks for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how advanced content production relates and builds towards the metaverse. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, if you go to the next slide, Emily, is planet scale augmented reality. So what we mean by that is essentially digital objects that are overlaid with the real world, which can create new services, new social experiences, and ultimately new ways to entertain yourselves with digital objects. The next, if you go next, Emily, we're also going to be talking about virtual worlds and virtual production. So this is essentially using gaming engines to create 3D environments where people can interact, but also those same sorts of gaming environments are increasingly being used in high-end TV and film production, as we've seen in Star Wars and The Mandalorian, and potentially starting to be used in the music and advertising industries. We're also going to be talking about immersive and 5G enabled audio, where the Catapult's done quite a lot of work. What we're finding is that side of things is actually absolutely pivotal to creating realistic experiences at this kind of high-end part of technology for content production. So I suppose it's worth just taking a step back as well, because I know everyone is talking about the metaverse at the moment, and it is probably the biggest buzzword. And I thought it would be worth just sort of trying to understand why we're talking about it in the first instance. The simplest definition that we in our tech team have agreed on is that it's an interactive 3D reality that blends the digital and the physical worlds. There are lots of popular examples I'm sure many of you guys have heard about. I'm sure everyone in the room has heard something about it already. But things like Roblox or Fortnite, also Ready Player One and Snow Crash being popular examples. But the term has 100% been hijacked by Facebook and Meta over the last month or two, which means it's kind of had a few kind of impacts. One of those is that their definition of it is very much around virtual worlds rather than necessarily the outdoor augmented reality side of it. Given Facebook's privacy record, you might argue that it's potentially quite dystopian for them to be leading the charge on this. And it's also quite hard for other definitions to take hold in the narrative, and that's something we're quite keen to change if we can. Ultimately, the metaverse is a hugely complex convergence of different technologies and social changes all at once. So we're not going to have time to cover absolutely anything and everything to do with the metaverse in this event. There are lots of events that will try and do that better. But with regards to the content side of things, there are a few good ways to think about it, what we mean by it. The first of which is that if you think about it's quite an immature term in the way that in, let's say, the early 1990s, the World Wide Web was a term that people used. And for many people, the World Wide Web meant email, or for others, it meant search, or it meant a personal website with pictures of your cats. And whilst some of those are still true, that's not how we necessarily think of the internet now. I think that the metaverse is, we're at that early stage where for some people, the metaverse means VR, or for others, it means cryptocurrencies and NFTs, and for others, it means Fortnite. And everyone's kind of right at the moment because there is no accepted definition. The second is that it is actually, in a way, an umbrella term that just captures absolutely anything and everything that for the exciting parts of AR and VR and AI and all these different technologies that are starting to converge together over the next 10 years. And this is actually something I think our tech team at the Catapult firmly believe that actually this is just a label that's been stuck on to categorize quite a lot of cool stuff all at once, rather than it necessarily even being a thing. And lastly, the simplest version is it's kind of a 3D version of the internet, which might mean using this technology to create additional layers to the physical world and/or build new digital ones from scratch. So ultimately, just to kind of recap, we're just talking about the content part of this equation. We're not talking about infrastructure and interoperable platforms, which are a really key component of making this vision a reality on a macro scale. And we're not talking about the social behavioral changes which have come accelerated hugely by the pandemic, which is one reason that a lot of people are talking about this at the moment. But if you are interested in reading more about this kind of stuff, I'd recommend looking at the stuff that Matthew Ball and John Radoff have written on the subject. So let's bring it back to the three content areas that we were talking about initially. So because all of them are really pivotal to bringing this next generation of experiences to life. So starting with virtual production, when you make virtual production content, you're making content in 3D. And once you've got those 3D assets, you can then later leverage those assets to create gaming environments or new types of experiences and a whole multitude of other media, not to say more, essentially you've got virtual film sets and assets that you can recycle. So really, really powerful as time goes on. And that fills the pipeline for future metaverse experiences. Planet scale AR is essentially the real world metaverse. So creating new flavors of the real world, new interpretations on top and different layers on top, which I think is a really exciting area, which we'll talk about a lot later. And lastly, spatial audio. We're finding if you're in a immersive experience and you want to have any sort of social experience, you need to feel where your friends are, and if you want to hear the music, you need to be close to it. We're finding that spatial audio is really actually a pivotal part of the equation of making these experiences realistic. And lastly, why are we as an organisation talking about this? From what you heard from Emily, essentially we're an R&D and innovation agency that's focused on convergence of the advanced technologies that she talked about, and we have a remit to ensure that those technologies benefit the UK's economy and our startup ecosystem. So we're thinking very long and hard about how this macro trend impacts our startups, essentially. We are undertaking a range of projects, both government-backed and commercially. One of them, we are working with BEIS to determine the strategy for the UK's cyber-physical infrastructure, the consumer economy, and the metaverse being a really core component of that. So we're undertaking quite a lot of research in this space. We've also been working on some exciting 5G projects, and I've got a program launching with Niantic, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which is also within this space. And lastly, we're also launching our own virtual production studio, which will be really open to the public very shortly, as well as a metaverse-themed acceleration program for startups in 2022. So that's a kind of wrap up of why we thought this was a good idea and why we thought it would be good to kind of talk about this sort of stuff. I'll leave it there and stop talking about the metaverse briefly, and I'll hand over to Steve from the APA to kind of give a high level of that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Max. Delighted to be here. There are three reasons I'm really valuing part of this. The first is that I think Digital Catapult are brilliant. Their organisation, the way they put this together, there couldn't be 10 better speakers presenting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of them. The second is, this is of course a vital area for all our members, and exploring the opportunities for them is a vital part of what we do. And the third reason is that talking about something that has the word metaverse in it makes me sound like I'm very much part of the future in a Zuckerberg type way. And of course, I value that too, because like everybody, I'm striving to keep up really rather than being ahead of the curve. So for those of you who don't know about the APA, we're the trade body for commercials production companies. And that's production companies, editors, post, music, audio post, any company involved in making commercials, which of course are now products for all media. We provide advice and amendments to contracts, crew terms, training, promotion in the UK and overseas. For example, we took 35 members to Silicon Valley to meet Netflix and Google. We strive to keep members up to date with new opportunities because they're small, brilliant entrepreneurial companies, but because they're small, they have their head down looking at getting the next bit of work in and doing the current piece of work as well as they possibly can. So they don't have the headspace to go and explore new opportunities on their own. So we try and provide them with these opportunities, and we look forward to doing that in partnership with Digital Catapult. All these interesting new opportunities, we have members, we have an immersive group that does that, and that showcases work in the immersive area with companies like the Mill and NPC. And then of course we now have virtual production. And one of the effects of the pandemic is to accelerate some of these changes that probably would have happened over a few years, because while we've been marooned at home in the early parts of the pandemic, we learned how to do things like virtual production. We learned how to do remote production. We learned that we could produce a good creative product using all of these means of doing so. And there's fantastic opportunities through different types of digital production now. So for example, you can make a car ad by filming some roads around the world and putting the car on it digitally. That enables the car manufacturer to change the make and the model very easily, to use it in all different spheres, because typically an advertiser will want content now they can run in about 500 different ways. So that produces huge opportunities for that. It also answers some of our ad green demands. Ad green is our big scheme to reduce the environmental impact of production, because of course, like all organisations, we also have wider aims now, like diversity and inclusion and environmental responsibility. And we see remote production and digital production as being means of reducing, not of course eliminating, because some shoots will need to travel, reducing the environmental impact of production. So it's very much part of that. So with those COVID accelerations have really helped with that. We look forward to learning more today and to working with Digital Catapult from now on in creating opportunities the UK generally, and of course for APA members in particular. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Steve. Really, really good to get an overview of the APA and for the rest of your members. Okay, so thanks very much. So I'm going to ask my panelists now to switch on their videos and unmute themselves. So we're going to get everyone on the screen. And I will then hand over to each of you one by one, so you can introduce yourselves. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, and I'm going to start with Andy from WPP.
Hi, everybody. I am Andy Hood. I'm Vice President for Emerging Technologies at WPP, which basically means that part of my role is to make all of these kind of emerging technologies like metaverse and artificial intelligence and a bunch of other things clear and understandable to clients, to enable our agencies to do them, to work with all of our partners, bring all that stuff together and make sure that we're doing valuable and sustainable work in the field.
Fantastic, thanks. Anna?
Hi, I'm Anna Watkins, and I'm Global VP for Growth for Technicolor Creative Studios. And for those of you who don't know, that encompasses MPC in the mill. So I'm working very closely with the teams across the world. And again, we're looking at new ways, pioneering ways, such as virtual production, to expand our services and innovative ways of working with our clients to drive innovation.
Thanks, Anna. Megan?
Hey everyone, I'm Megan Hughes. I'm on Niantic's platform team, and we're working to bring the real world AR platform to developers and brands. And that's why we're working with Digital Catapult. It's really excited to be here with you all.
Thanks. And Tiago?
Hey everyone, my name is Tiago, and I work for Warner Music, specifically a team called New Business and Ventures, which focuses on creating new revenue opportunities for our artists and defining the strategy that they should follow and we should follow in areas as ranging as gaming to next-gen content.
Awesome. So cheers, guys. Really, really glad to have all of you on, some real leading minds here. So the way we're going to structure this panel is the first half we're going to dedicate towards talking about the real world metaverse, the sort of planet scale augmented reality stuff that we talked about earlier. So we're going to talk mostly about that, which will be related to the Niantic program we're running with Megan. The second half is going to be more geared around virtual worlds and to a large degree virtual production as well. So just to give everyone a heads up if that's what to expect. Okay, so to kick off, I'm going to ask Megan, I suppose it'd be good to sort of give an overview of Niantic's mission. And one of the reasons I guess we are working together is that both organizations share some vision around what the real world metaverse might look like. But you guys have recently launched the Lightship platform, and maybe it'd be good if you could sort of highlight a little bit about what it can do. And if you want me to show the video, let me know when.
Yeah, I will. Thank you very much, Max. Yeah, we really believe that we're at the beginning of another major platform shift, like you just mentioned, Max, with your tee up on metaverse. And at Niantic, we think it could be one of the most consequential ones yet, especially as people are starting to question, the effects that technology has on their lives, whether they want it to have so much effect, whether they want to have more space. So we really see this shift and this opportunity right now for us to pave the way, and the developers and brands who are on the call right now to choose what sort of universe you want to create with the metaverse and which direction you want to go in. So at Niantic, our mission is to inspire people to explore the world together. For folks who aren't familiar, we're the creators of Pokemon Go and Ingress and the new Pikmin Bloom, which is a really cute walking game to get out and plant some flowers. And really that's the essence of our goals at Niantic, is to look at how technology can better serve humanity versus the opposite, and us serving it. So with that, we called Lightship that powers all of our games internally. And we just started with the first iteration of it. We call it the ARDK, the AR Developer Kit, which we've opened up just a few weeks ago. I'm forgetting what date it is. It feels like forever ago. But we opened it up to developers and brands as our first part of our technology. We'll be continuing to bring more tech to developers and brands for them to create, realistic, meaningful AR experiences. And we're working closely with teams like Tiago's team at Warner Music and the Digital Catapult group, and aiming to bring that technology to brands, artists, and musicians, and show a different way that you can create meaningful connections with your fans, and actually inspire them to also create together. So that's the first half. Our developer kit, and Max, maybe you could show that now, is just the beginning. It's It's got 4 features for meshing, occlusion, and semantic segmentation. So here's an example from our partners at Shueisha. But if you can imagine, like for musicians and artists and advertising as well, this opens up a lot of new opportunities. What you're seeing here are the virtual characters. You're also seeing multiplayer. So all 3 people are seeing the same experiences from different angles on their phones together in a co-shared environment. And as the characters run through, our mapping technology has quickly meshed the space in real time. So it's created a digital map of that space. So those characters can realistically walk across and be occluded by the buildings or the materials in the chair. And then at the end of that, Max, I guess it's not there, but there's also a big ship that comes out of the sky, and you'll see like where we can see the sky, the ground, the buildings, and we can occlude objects that come out from behind it. It's okay if you don't have it, it's all on our website. But really, yeah, that's the first half of our AR features that we want to try to bring to various industries, not music, entertainment, sports, and travel, and trying to help brands use AR and connect people to more realistic environments.
Awesome. And I guess maybe a good follow on from that, Tiago, I know that you guys are working with Megan's team, and there's a certain amount that you can't share, but it'd be great to learn about what Warner Music's vision is for this and how it impacts record labels in a relationship with fans.
Of course. And by the way, thank you for the invite to the session. Very excited about it. I think we subscribe totally with the vision of an AR-based universe that is visible everywhere and anywhere you go, right? Because there's a component part of music that I think is important to highlight, the fact that it was born as a medium, a format which was auditive in nature. And so the principal point for consumption of music historically has been audio, has been sound, which is a specific sense that we all have, hopefully some of us. And we can, with it, enjoy a variety of different experiences which are associated to music, right? In the 50s and 60s, the music video started becoming a format associated with music, which was popularized clearly in the 80s with MTV. And you clearly had a blast of UGC creations when YouTube came along, essentially handing over the power to general creators that we could be a creator. So why we're excited about this platform shift that you mentioned is the fact that there could be another explosion of creativity being handed to the hands of any creators, any consumers, any prosumers, people like you and me. And associated with that, it can be consumed in a way which is on top, quite symbiotically meshed with how the music, the auditive senses come into play, right? So that you could enjoy music in new visual ways like you haven't before with the world around you. That's why we're really excited and why we subscribe very much with the vision that Niantic has played out, and why we think, particularly for fans, it's quite important because it gives them agency to, like YouTube did and so many other platform evolutions, make them creators and gives them agency to participate actively and not just passively in this space.
That's super interesting, and I really like that that term around a platform shift of ultimately enabling your consumers to become your creators, I guess. Andy, is that something you're seeing? Is that how AR resonates at WPP, or what are your thoughts on that as a?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think AR is it won't be on this panel completely, but AR is almost being missed in a lot of the metaverse conversations. Like the easiest way to, if someone shouted at you, what is the metaverse, while you were running for a train, you'd probably shout back virtual worlds and then just keep going, because it's the simplest, most easy way to do it. But it's actually quite dangerous, I think, for a brand to think of metaverse that way, because that encourages you to think of there being two separate audiences, a real world audience and a virtual world audience. Which reminds me very much of, like, it's about 15 years ago or so when you had e-commerce started to happen, and brands would have their traditional brick and mortar that had been going on for decades, and then you had this new e-commerce team, and the two didn't talk to each other. And as agencies, we spent a lot of time connecting those dots so that people were linked across the whole chain, and you weren't having different conversations with different audiences for the same reason or different reasons. And the bridge between the real world and the virtual world, is to a large degree is augmented reality. It's the way that you can show your real world things in virtual worlds. It's the way you can bring things out of virtual worlds into the real world. It's so that you could be a brand and you can talk about having an audience that is across those things. Because the metaverse is going to play an increasingly large part in our everyday lives, probably without any of us recognizing the creep as it happens. You get things, I think that what we've seen, great examples of this, but I love the Snapchat, the city painter, where you would go somewhere and using AR, you would put virtual graffiti on a wall, but then you would go somewhere else and someone else would come in and then they would see the graffiti you left behind. So there was a persistent virtual world, like almost a shadow world behind the real one. And that's really interesting and really empowering. And it takes you some interesting places. So AR is an incredible, a really important part of any metaverse concept, because it is the bridge between the real and the virtual.
I couldn't agree more, because I suppose one of the reasons we wanted to run this event was because we thought the metaverse conversation is being dominated by Ready Player One, Facebook, kind of slightly scary. I mean, I own a VR headset, never ever use it. It's not that's not happening yet.
They're good, Max.
I know, exactly. but I think we're at that point though. AR is, I think, as exactly as you say, a bridge that will actually start to provide that lower barrier to entry sorts of experiences where people, and now that you can have a social platform to do it on because of Niantic stuff, I think it gets a lot more interesting, exciting. Plus, I'm also with you, the idea of having a alternate version of reality that you could sort of, like a lens of, now it's the upside down from Stranger Things or whatever. There's loads of really exciting stuff you can do there. Anna, I'm interested from the Technicolor perspective, because of course you guys have got some of the highest end production studios in the world. How excited are you guys about the AR side of things, and what are your guys' sort of goals and what are your thoughts about the AR space?
Yes, so in the AR space, exactly as you say, at the moment where we're focusing is in the virtual world and virtual production, just by the nature of our business. And so, I mean, how we're looking at it, it's a super exciting opportunity. And what we're seeing with virtual production, it's potentially revolutionary for both music and the advertising worlds. So, I mean, really simply put, because there are lots of different interpretations of what virtual production means, we interpret it as really the ability to combine live action footage and direction with CG in real time. So obviously that means that we can have VFX directors in multiple locations around the world who are creating and rendering 3D digital environments in real time, whilst we have our film directors and the cast members physically working on set. And that really is groundbreaking. It's super, super complex. As you said, Max, at the beginning, it really is the likes of Star Wars, The Mandalorian, the film worlds that are pioneering this. But I think what's exciting for us, partly driven by the pandemic, again, as you said, with films that we've done for the likes of Lexus, we were actually forced to accelerate our learnings in virtual production much, much quicker than we would have done. And I think, if we just try and distill it down into what are really some of the straightforward benefits, when obviously we're all up and running, we're familiar with the technology and we can afford to invest in it, it's, if we look at what we've done today, it can drive savings through virtual location scouting, as well as the creation of CG assets and LED virtual environments. And obviously what that means is there's no need to transport the crew, the cast, the props, and nor is there, a need to build the full scale sets. Also, what virtual production can do is, critically, it enables us to make creative decisions and also revisions live on set. So again, we can laugh internally about this. Quite often, jobs come into us and it's almost like give it to the post house, the VFX house, because we can fix it after the live action shoot is done. So actually, that will be a huge shift, as I said, where we're getting our live action directors, our CG artists and technologists all collaborating in real time. So, that really is transformational. Obviously, other things that will allow quick virtual set transitions, because obviously we can, change the LED virtual environments. So that means uninterrupted shooting, throughout the day, control of virtual locations, no need for the expensive, much dreaded, weather insurance, as obviously we can control all the environment, whether it's the weather, the time of day, as well as all of the lighting. And I think last but not least, I think the thing that really is transformative and really is super, super exciting is what it enables us to do is to facilitate global collaboration in real time. So as we said, around the world, all different types of technologists, actors, directors, as well as the clients themselves. So really that is such a game changer. And I thought what would be useful is actually to show you really one of our first virtual productions, apart from Lexus, which was, our first virtual production. But given this is obviously a music themed event, I'd love to play the film that we recently made. We just did this in September, which was our first virtual live, and this is quite a mouthful, interactive concert. And we created this for Riot Games. And this was for the League of Legends, one of their biggest blockbuster games, for their virtual metal band called Pentakill. Now, interesting to note, little segue, but important context. Pentakill, so the virtual metal band, has already released 2 virtual albums, and they've been complete global chart toppers in the likes of Billboard and Spotify. So in that context, we basically collaborated with Riot Games to actually launch through this interactive concert, 45 minutes long, in real time, streamed live on the Wave platform, which is this incredible interactive music platform. And this really, really was the first of its kind. And I think what's quite mind-blowing about it, and you can imagine, it caused quite a few sort of palpitations back in our studios to actually pull this off with a number of collaborators. And this sounds a bit like the 12 Days of Christmas, but I'm going to try and remember it. We had something like over 40, we had 40 virtual cameras on set, over 70 digital artists, creative technologists, VFX directors, you name it, collaborating around the world. We had 5 surreal sets that we were changing in real time. We had 7 virtual band members actually on a physical set in our virtual, production studio wearing mocap suits. And all of them were collaborating in real time because of obviously facilitated by the game engine Unity. So really for us to pull that off along, as I said, with Riot Games and the Wave platform, as well as interesting Stewfish, you might not have heard of them, but they were one of the leading creative collaborators in terms of choreography and stage direction production for Pink Floyd back in the day. And we managed to pull that off, which was a phenomenal feat. So I think that's probably enough from me. Max, if you could play, it's just a short making of video. I thought I wouldn't take up all 45 minutes by showing you what we did, but we'll just give you a little bit of a flavour of the complexity, but also the mind-blowing collaboration that we managed to pull off.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's such an exciting, such a cool video. So I think it is worth showing, and I think we'll like to want to tie in the virtual production work with the AR stuff as well. That's quite cool, I think, because it sort of shows the future of what this looking stuff can do. But I think one question I have for you, Anna, which we were talking about on the panel beforehand, is everyone on this call is excited about doing this sort of stuff. How do you, and maybe actually I'll ask this to Andy, if you've got a big idea for that, you've got a huge idea, this is not a cheap thing to do, how do you go about selling a concept like that internally? If you've got that big idea, what's your route forward? How do you get that, bring that to life? Oh, you're on mute, Andy.
That's digital life for you right there. In many ways, it's similar to what we've always faced in trying to get big ideas across. The first thing that really have to do is have everybody like on an equal footing of understanding the terrain. as you pointed out at the top, there, you know, the term is a very nebulous one, which means the risk is that you're talking about an idea in one context and someone is listening to you with the idea in a completely different context. So you have to establish a, you know, a common frame of reference and get some understanding there. And then really it's the program that happens when any exciting new area comes out is to prepare the groundwork for these big ideas, to get people on board, excited, aware, knowledgeable, understanding as quickly as possible, and to prove things out in small ways, basically. Before the first time you do something for a brand in a space, if that's like, we could do this for you, it's a couple of million quid, it's probably not happening, you know, because it's very difficult to do that. Historically, it's always been difficult to do that. So doing small things, either that you've done yourself or with other clients or with this client, to bring them along a journey where they can see the value, they understand the fit that they have. You've done your homework clearly. That means that what you're suggesting is, you know, appropriate for them and places their brand in the right context, et cetera, et cetera. So really it's about bringing them along a journey of understanding and then proving things out in small ways before then, you know, coming in with something big, which at that point is more of a fait accompli because you've done all the work up front.
And maybe a good question to ask Tiago at this point, because you've done a really exciting collaboration with Anything World, who we're going to hear from in panel 2, or sorry, in Cassandra's presentation. But that's a really exciting kind of collaboration where, I mean, I'll let you talk about what it is, but it'd be good, maybe as it's in this sort of emerging space, it'd be good to learn maybe how that one came about.
Of course, thank you. But before I do that, I just want to say that I was one of the attendees of the Pentakill virtual concert. I was there. I don't have long hair, but I was headbanging, and I really
metal hat didn't.
Tiago, no, I'm impressed. I'm gonna be giving you exclusive access to the next one.
Great. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted out of this panel. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an incredible, really, really intense, and I mean it in a great way, experience, because I went in thinking that it was going to be like most other virtual concerts or virtual experiences, and it ended up being a much longer, much deeper, and much interactive experience than what I expected. And that's really when you're taking the concept of a virtual concert and pushing it to the max. And as a consumer, outside of me being an operator, as a consumer, I really enjoyed that part of it. And
so how much are you listening to Pentakill now?
I have, and my party line is that they're much more melodic than I expected. But you know, as an operator, of course, Anna mentioned Wave. We are an investor in Wave, the companies that they worked with, and are actually working with them on a variety of concepts as well, and have been working with them since very early on when they did the first Galantis virtual concert, where it was much more rudimentary, much less interactive. And it's fantastic to see how things have progressed up to this apex, which was Pentakill's concert. But as Andy mentioned, not everyone in the world will have the type of budgets, the type of requirements, and the type of means and resources that these concerts require, because these are, let's face it, the creme de la creme, the really premium space of virtual events. And I think that there are also opportunities for those that have perhaps less means and resources, but an equal or even greater amount of interest and desire to do things, right? That's one of the reasons as to why we also invested in Anything World and have done work with them. The fact that they use predefined 3D models, which are publicly accessible to anyone and can use their machine learning algorithm to essentially recombine how their behavior would have been if they had been created with an animated behavior, with press of a button, or even if you don't know how to code, just purely through a voice command, that significantly decreases the barriers needed to create these worlds and these experiences and these applications, right? That's what we've done with artists like Pink Sweats and Ashniko in partnership with Anything World, because it allows us, companies that perhaps, or for artists that perhaps might not have as big of a marketing budget or big as a virtual event budget as someone like Riot Games, to do these experiences and events, which are still very interactive, still very much 3D based, and still provide a level of immersion that fans love to enjoy and engage with.
And I like that. That's the thing I love about the Anything World piece, is that they basically lower the barrier to entry to absolute ground zero, where you can just say, I want to see a table or a dragon or whatever. It's just really exciting. For everyone else on the call, the one other thing that's interesting, and I think is probably one other thing I'd touch on, that links our AR world that we're talking about and the virtual production world, is that a lot of the skills, particularly when it comes to game engine and content creation, are very similar. You need to know Unity or the Unreal Engine, and also on the AR side, Niantic's platform. Like, Megan, what would you say are the kind of key skills for people who are maybe thinking of getting into this world? Where do they start, and how are you finding that how important is it that people start developing these sorts of skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's emerging, like we're all talking about, and I think just going back to what Andy was mentioning, for brands, a lot of times it's, we're not going to go drop the $2 million on that experience, but we'll do something. I mean, Niantic's been working closely with musicians and brands on doing something, a short experience on your phone, and that's something that's engaging with your audience. I mean, as a brand and a musician, your audience, and so try out what it is that you think they'll enjoy, and test and iterate and try out these new things. It's new like every month. So you could say, this webinar right now, if you watch it and we say like, go learn this, go learn that, and then there's an absolutely new technology coming out. And so I do think just getting into the areas that you're passionate about, that drive you, and that you think that you have some really creative ideas around, and testing it out. Niantic runs on Unity. Unity has amazing like lessons and courses at Niantic. Now that we've launched, we're going to start our own course area and lessons, and just kind of jumping in. And this space is really open and collaborative. Everybody loves being in it, and they love sharing, is from what I've seen over the last decade. And we're all willing to help and share and be inspired by each other and help each other learn. So I think just diving in and seeing what you're passionate about and following that.
Awesome. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and I thought it would be a good moment to sort of jump into the Q&A. One of them, I thought I'll start with. Also, this is now a moment for everyone else. If anyone else has questions, now's a good moment to chuck them in. What is the biggest fear the panel has, and the most exciting opportunity that you see for the metaverse? And I'll start with Andy, as you ran an internal WPP metaverse event, so you probably got the most utopia, dystopia.
You got unmute too, Andy.
God, I'll learn. One day I'll learn. It's emerged, that's right. So the biggest fear, I think, is just that when there's going to be an awful lot of stuff done. And this will sound awful, but most of it's going to be pretty dreadful, because in any walk of life, in any genre, in any creative form, most content isn't very good. Most books are not very good. Most music never, ever gets played. It sits on iTunes or Apple Music or whatever, and like only your friends and family play it. And the cream kind of rises to the top. But it does mean that we are going to have to kind of sit through some amazing work and some amazing projects that people on this panel will do, and hopefully we'll all be involved in. But an awful lot of other stuff that makes life difficult for us all, because it muddies the waters, because it isn't very good, it isn't high quality, it hasn't been thought through. There's going to be a lot of that. And when I think of that, those are the times when my energy saps a little bit. The other side of that is that we have the opportunity to do some amazing things. The early days of any new field are probably the most exciting, because it's the chance when you can do something which is really influential. There's a lot of people looking at the metaverse, in quotes, and talking about this is that there is a bad future that comes out of this. But if you want to have a really positive impact and create a metaverse that you know, that we all kind of believe in, and that has values that we all share, and the future that we want to share for, you know, for us and our kids, then this is the time to really get in and be involved in doing it, because this is the time when something brilliant will be at its most influential. It won't just be lost in the mist, you know, in say 2 or 3 years time. That's really, really exciting. And, you know, that's the time when my energy levels go right back up again.
I was going to ask you how you sell it. That's how you sell it. Done. Sorted. That's your line. Anyone else on the panel? Biggest fear or biggest fear and most exciting opportunity?
I know one of our biggest fears at the moment is being able to recruit the talent, or as Megan said, to, if you like, home grow our talent. Because, you know, whereas previously we'd be competing probably against our nearest and dearest competitors in the VFX market, whereas now we're competing against Apple, Netflix, Niantic, Facebook, you name it. Everyone obviously is piling into this space. So for us, actually, one of our biggest challenges is not that we haven't got the ambition or we don't want to invest in it, is actually being able to recruit or develop that talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something that we as an organisation have been roped into, I guess, in the last year. Is how do we launch how do we enrich and develop the UK skills programs for these emerging areas, including starting with virtual production, but actually now more broadly, metaverse is actually something we're thinking very carefully about. I mean, if I had a kid of the right age now, I would 100% be saying go and learn gaming engines, because it's just and learn how to add, you know, build APIs into them and all that sort of stuff. So go on, Megan.
I was just going to pile onto that, just like what Andy and Anna were saying. It's the developers for us. It's also the brands and the artists. And, you know, like Andy was saying, there is going to be a lot of content out there that's just going to be muddying the waters. And, you know, we want to try to work closely with folks who want to build these really compelling and meaningful experiences to then lead by example and ideally show, you know, a good use case for this in every vertical, and a good example that folks can come in and look at and say, oh, they did this way. That was really inspiring. I'm going to take it, add my own little bit to it. And so not just like training the developers on how to build the code, but also teaching the industry and the people who are making these decisions at these brands on like what are different ways that you can use this technology to meet your brand goals and to meet your audience's needs, and really trying to like connect people back to the world. I don't think it'll be a dystopian nightmare that we're all been talking about. I think we will self-regulate and we'll figure out what works best for everybody as we go. There'll be some little mistakes, but just to say, the last thing I'll say, what I'm truly hopeful about personally myself is the industries and the areas that haven't gotten to like into this yet, or haven't, you know, gotten the exposure of the mass scale, that are working for the better of the planet, or the connecting people, and, you know, the greater good, and that inspiration that we've all gotten over the last year and a half, and trying to, you know, focus on like, what are the things that we need to do right now to create this better life for everybody and for our children and our children's children. And we've been working with social impact and, you know, folks who are photographers who are thinking, how can I use AR to teach people, you know, about the oceans, and that ability to reach anybody with a phone with a message can go either way. And we're trying to help push, you know, the folks who have a good story to tell and an education to share, and using AR and virtual worlds to do that.
Yeah, ultimately that's it. Kind of what, as Tiago said earlier, it's a new form of storytelling, because it's people moving around and you can engage with it in a new way. Quite right, there's going to be loads of crap as people get used to this. So I think that's definitely fair to say. So as long as you're ready everyone's ready to weed through it, that's fine. One question that's sort of maybe half Anna, half Tiago, because Tiago does the Pentakill interactive concert cost more or less than a stadium concert? I think we all know the answers. Hopefully yes. But and how much is the interactive tickets, and how is the money made to recover the cost? So I suppose translating that in a way is, what's the business model? Like, how do you justify, like, what are the business model behind virtual concerts? Is it all just is it a promo PR value that?
Yeah.
How does that work? And I guess I'd be interested to hear both Anna and Tiago's. I'd like to get one more question in before this as well, so you guys can
well, Max, quickly, I'll narrow down on Pentakill, and then Tiago can give the much broader picture. So for Pentakill, it was a free concert. So actually, the virtual metal band Pentakill was established many years ago as a form of deeper engagement, interactivity, if you like, extending the platform above and beyond the league, you know, the League of Legends, if you like, the game itself. So it really is broadening out the depth and breadth of the engagement with League of Legends through obviously the creation of the band and virtual entertainment, being able to buy their virtual albums and so on.
So it was a licensing thing with League of Legends. So that's
yeah,
okay.
So this was, I mean, it sounds sort of quite limited to say it was a promotion. It was much more than that. It was to promote the game, but actually it's providing a very in-depth, rewarding experience for the fans, the players, a way of interacting. So actually it is moving beyond the game, and I suppose just tinkering around at the edges of what we've been talking about when it comes to the metaverse.
Really exciting. It's not just go and do something with Pentakill, it's go and find a partner who would benefit from this. So I suppose it's a slightly more interesting kind of partnership. Tiago, any thoughts from you? I presume you guys must have been looking into this a fair amount.
I mean, I think not, first of all, the most important thing to say is that not every single virtual concert will cost the levels of what someone like Pentakill cost, and there are many different degrees to that scale. There are also different interests depending on what either the artist or the promoters and operators want to do. It could be, as Anna mentioned, purely promotional, yes, but there can also be monetization angles associated to it, whether that is a ticketed event, for example, or whether that is a part of including digital goods and other virtual merchandise if it's part of a wider ecosystem like Roblox, Fortnite. And there also could be just interactivity, tippings, and other types of digital purchases that certainly allow for fans to demonstrate their fandom in more engaged ways. So I don't think it's purely promotional, although there are those which will be purely promotional. I think that there are also abilities for you to monetize on top. And Max, I know that you want to go to another question, but if you don't mind, I'd love to just take a quick stab at the previous question, which you didn't give me a chance to answer, because I'm actually really excited about something in the metaverse that I've mentioned previously before, which is the fact that, yes, there will be a lot of content out there that will be crap. Yes, a lot of it will muddy the waters, but that's such as with everything. And particularly that's going to be something that is customary when you have user-generated content, right? User-created content. But I'm actually really excited about how that user-generated content can be persistent, how you as a user can have a persistent and permanent impact in what you're doing, whether that is a virtual event or a virtual concert, or whether that is an actual real-life AR-enabled world, like, for example, what Niantic is trying to build. The fact that if you're throwing a snowball at a wall, that snowball will be there until someone washes it away. If you have a graffitiing a wall, that will stay there until someone washes it away. That's what I'm really excited about the metaverse, because you will then have a fully user-created world that people can leave anything from messages to building buildings virtually. And the fear associated with that is, of course, when the time comes for all of these worlds to be discontinued, you will lose a very gigantic part of what society left behind. And that's really what I hope projects like Wayback Machine try and capture, like they did with the early internet, which I'm still very fond of, for these virtual 3D worlds that get.
I've not heard of Wayback Machine. Gonna have to look that up. We have technically just about run out of time, but I want to ask Megan and Andy just a soundbite answer to this last question, which isn't from there, but I just wanted to, because I was going to ask it earlier. Was what advice would you give to brands and agencies thinking about doing some of their first AR projects?
So I butted in here, Megan. I don't know if you wanted to take. Oh.
You both get a soundbite. It's fine.
I'll say something.
So I was going to say that the advice that I've been kind of giving across the board when people have asked me broadly this question is that the first thing you really have to do is to dive in and be involved and use it. For a lot of people, AR, metaverse, virtual worlds are things that their kids are doing. And then you have, senior middle-aged people talking about an idea to senior middle-aged brand person, neither of whom have done it before. And that way, confusion reigns. So my advice to people is in this new kind of pioneering territory, is dive in and use it, get acquainted with it, get involved. Sorry, that was too long for a soundbite.
That's great, because I'll just add on to that. plus one, plus one. And then once you've done that, I think you said this already, Andy, but I fully agree, like start small. You know, at Niantic, we're trying to find ways to democratize the access, make it, you know, here's one thing you can do outside the stadium in between halftime during a football game. Test it out and see where audience is like before, don't try to bite off more than you can chew. And as I mentioned with developers, it's the same for brands. Like we're all here to help, reach out. That's what we're trying to do with our partnerships at Niantic, and we've learned so much, all of us. And you know, with Niantic making their own games, we've got a lot of lessons learned that we're happy to share. And that's just, you know, just open the door and knock on it, and we'll share with you and tell you how to do it, what not to do. And this is a very collaborative space, I think.
I'd like to thank everyone on the panel. Really, really exciting insight. I think we covered a lot of ground, both on the real world AR side, plus virtual production. I know we could keep going for a lot longer, but I think we've got to park it there now. Huge thanks to everyone. There are going to be announcements about the program with Niantic, I think in a week or two. So do stay up to date with our website, and hopefully we will be able to share more about that very shortly. With that, however, I'm going to thanks everyone. So if you guys can all take your video off, and I will hand back over to Emily.
All right, thanks so much, Max. Thanks very much for that panel. Really, as you say, we could all just keep talking for hours and hours. There's so much to go into. And by the way, everyone, we will share the results of these polls if we haven't got time to kind of talk through them. So to try and keep as smoothly to timings as possible, I am now going to just reopen the slides on this end. Here we go. And I'd like to introduce Cassandra Strauss, who is the Director of Innovation with the BPI. Again, it's a real pleasure to have the BPI supporting us with this work. They've been long-term supporters of Digital Catapult, and we've worked together on a number of other events. So Cassandra, please welcome up as well, and tell us a little bit more about what you're working on at the moment, please.
Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you for having us. As you mentioned, we've done lots of things in the past as well, and we've been super excited to work with you on this event. The metaverse is something that we're really interested in, and our members are very interested in. So I will whiz through who we are and what we do really quickly, and hopefully open the door for opportunities. So, next slide, please. All right, so really quick, this is the trade body for the UK recorded industry, and we are here to promote and protect British music. We're a membership organisation, and our members are the 3 major labels, Universal, Sony, Warner, as well as over 500 independents, including BMG, Dirty Hit, and more. And our members account for 90% of all the music sold in the UK. On top of that, we run the Brit Awards, the Mercury Prize. We administer the Brit Certified scheme. So that's when things go silver, gold, platinum. We run things like National Album Day, the Record Club, and we co-own the official charts company. That's very much in a nutshell. But what I'm really here today for is to talk to you about our innovation strategy. So Emily, if you could please move this along. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so our in a nutshell, our innovation strategy works on 2 main strands. One is research and insight. We're on a flagship series of events called Insight Sessions, where we look at the intersection of music, business, and tech primarily, but sometimes we look at other businesses as well. Some of the things we looked at in the past included XR, smart speakers, esports, and many more. And actually, if you look at the next slide, at our 10 by 10 event, looking at the 10 trends for the next 10 years, the metaverse and sort of associated topics, including like the rise of creator culture, NFTs, and 5G, and so on, been a central part of it. So yes, very, very excited about the metaverse space. Then the second strand of activity is actually working with startups. So Emily, if you can move it along, please. So we run the Music and Tech Springboard program, which is designed to bring the music industry and startups closer together. We've assembled music tech leaders, both from our members and from the recorded side of things, as well as the larger ecosystem, like lawyers, advisors, investors, and so on, to really, really empower startups to create sustainable businesses in and around music. We're very proud of our community. We have 85 startups in the community. and it's growing constantly. And actually, we have 3 startups that are doing some brilliant work in the kind of music and metaverse space. So I will use the remainder of my time to introduce them. So if we could move to the first sizzle reel. So the first startup is Anything World, which has been referenced by Tiago earlier on the panel. You can play the sizzle reel now.
Welcome to Anything World, a platform that lets you create anything in your mind's eye. Make games, apps, snaps, flaps, and mixed reality G-maps. How it works? Our platform harnesses over 500,000 publicly available static 3D objects that you can use. Let's take a llama, for example. Our machine learning magic sauce first marinates it, then spins it around and brings it to life. Whatever you have the power to imagine, you can bring to life with Anything World.
On to the next startup. They are called Wristbands. Some of you may know them by their previous name, which is Overview Arc, and you can hit play. Cool. And last but not least, it's Volta XR. Okay, that's us in 5 minutes. If you want to work with us, work with our labels, engage with our startups, just find out more, our doors are open, please get in touch. My email is over there. You can find me on LinkedIn. The reports I mentioned earlier are available on our website for free, so dig in and hope to hear from as many of you as possible. And thank you so much, Digital Catapult, for having us.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Really good to see the talent that you're supporting, and also really nice that lots of those startups, again, we've worked with in some capacity as well. So it's just great when all of the ecosystem players are really coming together. So with that, I am going to move straight on now to the next panel. And in this panel, we're going to be looking more at the audio side of advances in content production. So please, if you could turn on your videos, please. The 4 panelists that are going to be joining me are Sam Slee, who's Senior Sponsorship Manager at O2 Telefonica. We've got Jamie Gosney, who's Director and Owner at Sonosphere. Mike Whitaker, the CTO of Outernet, and Javier Fonselas, who is the VP of Commercial Partnerships at Dolby Labs. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing there and we can all see each other's faces a little bit more. Now, really, everyone, this is an opportunity in this panel to try and talk a little bit more about what's been going on in this boom in audio that we've experienced over the pandemic more than anything. And we'll hear a little bit more from the panelists about some of their thinking behind this. But there's really been this massive shift in demand from consumers, both at home wanting to try and relive some of the experiences that they've been missing out on. But then also, I think the kind of theory is that there's been a lot more time for people from the engineering side and the content provider side to actually work and innovate around what is possible. So once again, audience, I invite you please to write in your questions. We should have a bit of time at the end. But before that, let me invite all of the panelists, please, to just tell me a little bit more about yourself and your company, and in particular, of course, what is it that you're currently doing when it comes to advances in audio? So first of all, if I invite Javier, please.
Hello, thank you, Emily. At Dolby, we've always had audio at the core of our innovation. So 9 years ago, we started working with Dolby Atmos, which is our object-based immersive audio. And it's really been quite a trip for us, expanding from, our beginning in the cinema to now being everywhere, mobile devices, cars. So yeah, it's been quite a trip in immersive audio for us this past few years.
Brilliant, thank you. Go on, Jamie, how about you?
Hello, thank you, Emily, for having me. This has been absolutely fascinating so far. So yes, I am the co-owner and actually commercial director of, the creative director of Sonosphere. Sonosphere specializes in all things immersive audio. So in the studio, pre and post-production, live sound, from designing systems for concerts, festivals, theatre, exhibitions, and also broadcast, immersive audio for broadcast. Particularly, we're looking at the whole live streaming thing and making that a much more kind of real experience for people. I believe there's a paradigm shift happening right now. I mean, I've been working with immersive audio or experimenting with it for the last 20 years, but certainly in the last 2 years, maybe there seems to have been a paradigm shift where 60 years ago, mono changed to stereo. And now we're seeing a huge change from stereo to particularly Dolby Atmos and obviously other immersive formats. So yes, thank you for having me.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure. All right, then, Mike, tell us more about what you're up to, because it is a pretty crazy project and very exciting.
It is, I think, hello everyone, and thank you. I think it's a bit crazy. I think one of the things I'm busy doing is trying to stay sane as we go through the fit out. We're not yet launched. So I'm the CTO at Outernet, which in a nutshell is a new immersive entertainment district right in the heart of London, just by Tottenham Court Road tube there. I think in terms of audio, it's absolutely the heart of our DNA, because the whole concept of Outernet springs out of Denmark Street, which is basically part of our complex, and bringing music back into central London, as I say, pulling on the heritage of Denmark Street with all of its music shops and its fame and probably moments of infamy as well. It's a large immersive space. We've got immersive video, we've got immersive audio. We operate in some of our spaces as a video resolution of 16K, which gives us lots of challenges, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And really, we're innovating as we go, and we want it to be a space for not just performers, but also for innovation. So the stuff that you're hearing Anna and Tiago talking about, and I know, Jamie and Sam and Xavier are going to be talking about as well, is just absolutely at our sweet spot.
Excellent. And yeah, we'll hear a lot more about what you're up to at the moment and how you're kind of putting together a venue that can support really some of the things we've already talked about, such as the metaverse and immersive audio. So Sam, please, you're coming at things obviously from more of the telco and network provider, but with this huge foot in the door already in live events, as O2 really do dominate the space for us in the UK. So please tell us a little bit more about what it is that you get up to and some of the most exciting projects that are going on from your side.
Yeah, thanks, Emily, and thanks for having us on this panel. It's exactly that, really. I suppose going a little bit off brief from the audio side of things and looking a bit wider than that, I guess Virgin Media O2, we have sort of two areas to play in, as you mentioned. So there's connectivity, which is essentially our core business. It's everything we do. Prior to the merger, I worked on the O2 side of things, and that was obviously all about mobile connectivity. But now that we've merged with Virgin Media, there's obviously a lot wider varieties of connectivity that we look at. But then if you look at the other end of the spectrum, in our sponsorships, and I work in our sponsorship team, so we sit across sponsorship of the O2, sponsorship of our O2 Academy venues, and the partnership with England Rugby. And obviously that is built on experiences at the core, live experiences at the core, and providing fans with those experiences. And so I guess where we come at from the, well, I guess immersive audio, but just immersive technology in a whole is how does the connectivity make it better? And then how can it deliver better experiences for customers and stuff like that? And I guess we're still we're learning about the technology, we're learning about what customers want, and then sort of looking what that means from a sort of innovation and I guess a sort of mass scale kind of rollout level, so to speak, as opposed to anything smaller.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, this is it. If there's any company that can scale these kinds of experiences, then it really does boil down to the likes of the telcos to be able to enable them. But let's start a little bit with this kind of onslaught, it feels like, of sudden consumer increase in demand for really rich audio. And the intriguing thing is that we've always had the option of having very rich audio with our films and going to the cinema. That's one of the benefits that it brings. But now we're seeing it across other formats of audio, i.e. the normal songs that we listen to and that we have in our houses and that we stream, along with a whole bunch of other settings. And I think, Javier, you mentioned some of the work you've done in cars as well. But for you as Dolby, you've always been at the core of the richest sound that's possible, but it has been very focused so far on that film environment. So what is it? Why do you think we're suddenly seeing this kind of explosion in interest and demand for spatial audio, in particular, in the formats that we're now seeing it in?
Okay. Yeah, Dolby. I mean, even though a lot of the immersive music with Dolby Atmos started in film, Dolby is a company of musicians. I mean, I think everybody in the company plays one instrument or multiple instruments. So we always had this frustration that we had to bring it to music. And we actually had to do a lot of research to make sure everything was right. It was so important for Dolby to get this right that we were afraid to launch it because there's just one opportunity to make it big. And now, fortunately, I think a few years ago, we got to the point where we thought we had the right thing. One of the key things we managed to get right was, today, most people listen to music with headphones. So how could we bring this immersiveness to headphones? Not everybody can set up, the full, what we call the 914 setup with speakers all over the room. So how do we bring the immersive sound to everybody? And this, being able to render binaurally was the key thing that we had to get right. So we worked many years to get that experience right. We convinced a few of the major record labels to work with us on this to fine-tune it. And over a year ago, we actually launched our first streaming music service with Atmos Music. And ever since then, it's been quite a roller coaster for us because we have Tidal, Amazon, Apple now streaming Atmos Music. And of course, the moment the big heavyweights like Apple and Amazon come on board, now all of a sudden this interesting concept that everybody wanted to explore, everybody's in a rush to develop. So, I mean, just in London, we've got over 50 studios now producing Atmos Music. In Europe, we got a few hundred more. So it's, it's been quite an incredible ride. We've got over 1 billion devices worldwide that can now play back Atmos Music. So when the pandemic arrived, everybody was sitting at home, no live gigs, no live music. It's like, Dolby, can you help us? And of course, that put even more fuel into what we were trying to do. I mean, we had done some experimenting with the Ministry of Sound with, just live music. And it's like I said, it's been quite a roller coaster. A few weeks ago, we launched MGM Live in Las Vegas, which is, a venue fit out with like Atmos playback capability. So yeah, we've gone all the way from MGM Live to headphones on mobile phones. And like I said, now we're trying out in cars. And yeah, it's really about making sure we can all enjoy immersive music just about everywhere. And we've got to make all the little bits of glue that make all that work together. And that's what's keeping us really busy and actually really energized. We're really happy and lucky to be living through this right now.
Yeah. This is, as you say, it is, one of the positives maybe that's come from the pandemic is people re-engaging with some of the bits of media and bits of creation that really make them feel good. And I think music is absolutely number one up there when we think of the different types of media experiences that really unlock emotion. I mean, that's something that, Jamie, you've talked to me an awful lot about, is exactly that, the way that people emotionally connect with music. And recently, ourselves and Jamie's company, Sonosphere, as well as O2 and Tiago from Warner, we've all been working together on this incredible project, this big R&D project called the 5G Festival. And it's really been looking at how 5G can unlock new hybrid music experiences. But along the way, as ever with these R&D projects, we've ultimately discovered things that we just never expected to discover. And Jamie has really been at the heart of one of those, and looking at how live music and the music that we hear in venues can be really unlocked and unleashed within people's home settings or other settings. So Jamie, and equally maybe Sam as well, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you're starting to see this, I guess, ultimate meaning of hybrid, from live music through to at home?
Shall I go first?
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, certainly it would be good to talk about the 5G festival in a minute, but just picking up on what you said now, we as human beings, we hear in 3D, we hear stuff behind us, above us, all around us. So actually listening from a pair of stereo speakers is a very unnatural way for us to hear things. And in our studio in London, which happens to be, I believe, the highest resolution Dolby studio in the country, which is actually 11.1.8. So, and Javier, you'll see that when you come this week. But we've had people in tears in our studio. We've had artists in there saying things like, "This is how I imagined this sounding," because when they're recording it in the studio, they're hearing stuff all around them. And we had a bunch of guys in the other day, kind of just technicians, sort of fairly geeky guys, not particularly emotional guys. And I played a track to them just to listen to, and it was silent. So I turned round and there was a guy just taking his glasses off and wiping his eyes. So we know that it does something. And with the other bit of research that I've done is I'm really looking at the whole kind of green issue now, and a non-profit organization called Julie's Bicycle, who've been looking at the whole way of making the arts and particularly the music industry a more sustainable industry, did some research a couple of years ago, and the UK music industry, UK alone, chucks over 500,000 tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere every year, and 3/4 of that is the live music industry. And I know bands like Coldplay and stuff are looking at ways of making themselves much more sustainable. But when you've got a band, particularly a big band, touring, and they might do the big arenas and stadiums, and they may do 15 stadiums or 15 arenas across the country, and they're trucking tons and tons and tons of equipment around. But not only that, then you've got all these people driving to these stadiums and arenas. And it's really not good for the planet at all. So we have to look at ways of recreating those concepts in a sort of virtual way. And of course, bands have to play those stadium shows, but they don't need to do 15. They could just do 2, maybe one in the north and one in the south. But then what we'll do is create little pop-ups of those concerts all over the country in local communities. So not only is that bringing revenue into local communities, but it's stopping people driving to these places. And but the way to do that and to make it as close to the experience as possible is to do the immersive audio thing, because the difference between stereo and immersive is just huge. Until you've heard it, it's pretty unimaginable, but also it's much more emotive. So that's one of the things we're trying to do with our other company, Live Revolution. But Sam, maybe you want to talk about the 5G project and what we're doing with that.
Yeah, I guess sort of, you know, I obviously can't speak to the technical side of things, but I can certainly speak to the how it feels and the experience that kind of Jamie was talking about there. And I think it's interesting. Nothing is going to be being in a live venue, listening to an artist perform in that way. I think we all know how that feels. We've all heard that track and the hairs on the back of our necks stand on end. But as James said, there's lots of things that are building now and starting to develop that maybe mean that that consumers and people will start to explore other options, and whether those other options are not going to the gig at all or these hybrid versions, they're becoming more and more apparent. And I guess with that, the demand for the quality of that to be as close as possible to the live version, it's never going to be the same, but as close as possible to the live version is paramount. You know, I completely, you know, get on board with Jamie's sort of pop-up view. We've got 20 O2 Academy venues all around the UK. So you can imagine sort of putting on an experience there. But again, the consumer is going to want that experience to be as close to live as possible. And this is when the immersive audio, this is when the immersive video really come into play. And the demand from the consumer for that to continue to improve and improve and improve. And I guess, you know, speaking from my point of view, the connectivity required in order for that to improve and improve and improve is just going to skyrocket. And so I think it's a really sort of fascinating area. And I think, I don't think, you know, we'll be able to rely on just a kind of 2D virtual stream to someone's living room. You know, I just don't think the quality is there. It might have worked in the pandemic when there was no live, but now that there is live back, you know, you're going to need to sort of find that area. And I think just talking about what the 5G festival is, I guess beyond there is that I guess what we're talking about is potentially co-locate or locating the audience in different places and beaming the artists potentially from one location. But actually an area that 5G Festival is starting to explore is artists being in different locations or musicians being in different locations, and through the connectivity, through the immersive audio, through the immersive video, bringing those artists together. And all of a sudden you can start to see, well, actually that adds a whole new layer to the live experience. If you've got an artist on stage and they might have previously collaborated on a few tracks with someone, but that artist is performing somewhere else, or, you know, in another part of the world, well, actually through this technology, they can perform on stage, come on for a couple of tracks, and it just adds more value to that live experience. And again, you know, we know how particular artists are about the quality of their output. That can only happen with the absolute best experience and the best sort of quality audio, best quality video, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, and that's 5G Festival, I guess, moving to Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, on that, as you kind of alluded to, it does open up a whole bunch of new business models, really, and new things, new, I guess, experiences and propositions, whether they're coming from the likes of the telcos like yourself, or of course venues to actually shapeshift slightly. And you know, with that, Mike, I'm going to kind of hand over to you on that. I mean, you are in a really interesting position that you are developing and building a brand new kind of cross-function creative venue, and that allows you to actually explore not only the kind of, I guess, the new experiences that you can host at this venue, but also therefore the kind of new technology that you need to be installing right from the beginning. So tell us more, what does it look like to try and build a venue kind of for tomorrow almost, because that is it. We've all talked over the last two panels about how we're moving at lightning speed.
Well, when I left there an hour ago or 2 hours ago, it was a lot of boxes and structured cabling and test signals. We're at the fit out stage, but it is almost, it feels like a once in a career opportunity to go in with a blank sheet of paper go through the stresses of getting it right and wrong, but also trying to, because as you said, we don't know where it's going to go. So trying to lay enough of a foundation that the business can function, the venues can function, while enabling other things to come along, rather than saying, oh, I can't do that because we've made this decision. So just to give a little bit more context about what AdToNet is, I said at the beginning, it's this immersive entertainment district. So, you know, we've got these 5 immersive video and audio spaces, the largest of which is 4 stories high. It's got 360 degree LEDs. I think the largest screen is 40 meters wide, 4 stories high. 2 of the walls are kinetic, they move, we can take them away, we can bring them back. So we're working in that space. It's the way we deal with it. It's real-time generated computer graphics, working at 16K resolution with 73 channels of audio in that one space. And then we've got some smaller spaces. We're also very fortunate to have built, and we're operating through a joint venture with a great team, the first purpose-built music venue in London since the 1940s. So that's a 2,000 capacity live music venue, which also has the iconic 12-bar club associated with it, which is coming back. And then we've got the Chateau Denmark, which is a music and session hotel. So that some of the hotel suites are session rooms, and they have the sort of audio that I'm sure Jamie's got in his studio. But we've put, you know, a pair of those really expensive speakers in a hotel room. So the infrastructure is about connecting all of those spaces together. And the other thing we've got, you know, which plays back to, you know, what Cassandra was talking about, we have a very close relationship with the BPI. So we're putting back a recording studio in Denmark Street with the BPI. It'll be the Brit Recording Studio for the schools to use that the BPI sponsors, plus new emerging talent. So we're trying to give back, but we want that to be a platform as well and have the latest technologies in it. So as I say, it's about creating a canvas that enables us to get up and running. But one of the challenges as well has been bringing technologies together from music venues and, you know, venues from galleries, from immersive experiences, real-time gaming, events, advertising, bringing all of those together, making them work. And we're doing some very interesting and unique integrations of software and control systems. I think that, as I say, making it sort of hyper connected, which I think is very important. And it feels like, you know, it's about spatial audio. It's actually about spatial video and how you bring those together. You know, one of the things I'm really interested to be looking at once we turn the space on, because in the larger spaces they're not fully turned on yet, but if we're generating content real time, and some of that is truly interactive, either at a macro level in terms of how people are congregating in the space, or at a one-on-one motion capture, how do we create real-time audio that matches how the video is generating itself effectively? How do we create that on a personal scale, maybe, you know, through you know, personal devices and Dolby Atmos or whatever, but also through a shared experience at the same time. And then once we've cracked all of that, we'll then go and do it in New York and LA, and want to join these spaces up together, yeah, so that we've got this network. So it's very complex. You know, there are some days when you think, yay, it's going well, and other days when you think, I'm looking forward to looking back on this and having done it. But yeah, we've got a great set of partners, and yeah, I can't wait for us to open the doors and show everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's an absolutely incredible looking place already. So to have, you know, in full working action is going to be, I think, a real inspiration, obviously, for the community at large as well. As you say, not just music, but also advertising. And, you know, something that's been intriguing me is obviously how this is a step change towards the metaverse, that we're, you know, again, depending how we define it, and the panel obviously talk through all sorts of different ideas, but Jamie, this is maybe a question for you, because the immersive audio side and the spatial audio side is going to be more and more demanded, I think, when we are thinking about living in a space of kind of virtual content. And therefore, both the visual is important. That tends to be what we're looking at the moment when we're thinking about the metaverse, but that audio is as well. And these kind of small step changes towards being able to have a digital twin of a venue so that you can watch it at home is effectively, in my mind, a step towards the metaverse. So how do you see kind of the projects that and the R&D that you're working on at the moment kind of syncing up with this conversation around what you're hearing from Facebook and from Epic and the big players in the metaverse?
The metaverse, I had to look that up, you know, I'm really old, Emily.
You'll realize it's nothing new until, you know, it's what we've been talking about since Ready Player One. It's just got a new level of excitement again. I
read about it, went, oh yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, okay. But just briefly, I mean, the 5GF project is a really good example of that, of particularly linking venues and audiences, which is so very briefly, the 5G Festival project has 3 use cases. So the first use case is we've developed a way of allowing musicians to play together from remote locations with insignificant amounts of latency. And, you know, that to first see that happen when, you know, 6 musicians were 60 miles apart from each other, creating something together was pretty spectacular. And, you know, again, it was one of those hairs on the back of the neck moment, a bit teary. And it was like, you know, Tiago said earlier on that there is an explosion of creativity, and this ability for musicians to collaborate live in a remote thing. I mean, just imagine that, you know, the music that could come out of that. If, you know, you've got a songwriter in London and a lyric writer in Morocco or another musician in Morocco, and those two cultures coming together to create a fusion of music that maybe never would have happened. You know, again, that plays into the whole green thing because it stops people having to get on planes and fly around the world just to be able to collaborate in real time. And that's what music's all about. You know, you can do it now where you can play to a click track and you can send that recording to a studio and then somebody plays along with it. But that live collaboration is when it gets emotive and when, you know, that's when great moments in music happen. But also the second use case of that is to allow people on their phones or tablets or VR headsets to be able to watch those collaborations, whether that's a rehearsal or whether it's a staged concert from musicians in remote places. And then the third use case is a sort of hybrid of those two, where we've got musicians collaborating. We've just done some trials actually between the O2 and Brighton Dome and Metropolis Studios, where we had 5 musicians spread out over those 3 venues playing together. But we also had audiences. So the audiences in 2 of those venues were aware of the audiences in the other venues as well. And that, again, is a very emotive experience. If you've got musicians in one venue who are aware of a bigger audience somewhere else. And that's the same for these little pop-up shows that I talked about. You know, if you've got a main concert happening and then you can broadcast that concert out to all over the country, you know, onto village greens in the summer, but those audiences at the main venue are aware of the other audiences listening to it. And you know, it's really exciting, all this. And of course, you don't want to stop the live performance. That's what it's all about. But to be able to let other people share that live experience, and also the business model too for artists and musicians, you know, if there can be some profit share scheme, because the amount of money to be made off live streams can be eye-watering.
Well, yeah, and I think that raises a great point in itself, as you say, that the business models that could come from this, and I'll defer maybe to both Javier and Sam as well to talk about that a little bit, because you two both have you know, you're part of massive companies here, and I think what's apparent is that the traditional value chain is shifting, and that's exciting. It offers up new opportunities, but it also, for large companies that are maybe sometimes you know, traditionally slower to react, it can mean some big changes. So and I'm just going to say at this point, if anyone does have a question, we've just got 5 minutes left of this panel, so please do let us know if you've got questions about the idea of remote concerts and listening to and experiencing these sorts of spatial audio things at home or in remote venues, please do give us a shout. But on that note of kind of new business models and what you're seeing emerging, Javier, I don't know if you're kind of starting to dig into that as Dolby, because this can potentially open up a whole new range of things for the company, right?
Yes, definitely. One of the big challenges that we have in the music space is, I mean, we've become very good at doing this in gigantic venues. So, we can do the Olympics, we can do gigantic concerts, but how do we bring this to a small jazz club? How do we bring this to, to all these, spaces, all over the place? I mean, Jamie was talking about not having to travel to the gigantic venues. And I mean, one of the challenges there is connectivity, and that's where 5G fits in. But one of the challenges for us is, can we make it affordable for, any venue to actually set up the right setup? Now, of course, a lot of the cloud distribution helps there, but you still need, some of the basic capture and coding and transmission to happen at the venue. And I mean, our ambition is that at some point, just a simple computer with the right, inputs from, the right microphones would be able to do that. And we think if we can do that correctly, we'll actually enable, all kinds of venues to actually benefit from this, live streaming world. Mm. And I mean, we're not there yet. We've got some prototypes, we've done some experimenting, but that's where we want to go. We want to, basically empower anybody, no matter the size of your venue, to be able to participate, and hopefully we'll get there.
That's really cool to hear, because you're right, that that is the biggest challenge, particularly in the UK, when it comes to our venues and our creative ecosystem. It's still largely publicly funded, and that's really, really hard, as you say, to democratize it and make it available. So that's really exciting to hear that that's something that's kind of R&D priority within the company. I mean, Sam, I find it really fascinating that obviously you're in that dual position, but ultimately you've got hundreds of thousands, probably millions of customers that are using O2 Virgin and mobiles around the country, and this does in itself offer you new opportunities to get immersive experiences in the new form, in an audio definition as well as visual, out to your customers, and to kind of link it all up. So are you able to tell us any more about things that you're looking at to keep up with consumer demand, and what are the kind of new ventures?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's definitely millions of customers. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Actually, so interestingly, just on the whole metaverse virtual gig, a colleague of mine did a presentation last week, and we think we managed to trace back the world's first virtual gig to Suzanne Vega in Second Life in 2006. Yeah. So and you can go and watch back some sort of very grainy kind of videos and very sort of low graphic effects of it and stuff. But yeah, so obviously purely demonstrating that this isn't kind of new thinking, so to speak. And I think that the challenge has always been with this beyond live element is the business model, and the business model is going to always be driven by the customer demand. And I think the wider industry either didn't have time, or were focused on other models to really think about what this kind of the live streaming, the virtual model is, and whatnot. It's taken probably a pandemic and Travis Scott bursting onto the scene in Fortnite for people to kind of really stand up and go, okay, there's an opportunity in here. And to be perfectly honest, I think where we are with it as a brand is tracking really where it is from that consumer demand perspective. So the industry is obviously starting to understand that there is money to be made from it. And again, there are live streams that are chargeable, and those might be just 2D live streams and whatnot. But actually, the end result is going to be is going to be determined by that consumer and what they want and what they're willing to pay money for, if indeed they are going to put off going to the live, so to speak. And I think we're part of that, but we are still learning, like everyone else, actually what is going to be the best option. And again, that's why we do a lot of these R&D projects. Yes, they work with the connectivity side of things, but it's actually to understand what's the model, what's the value, what's the sort of benefits and the sustainability for them beyond just doing a good bit of tech and an exciting bit of tech, essentially.
Well, exactly. It's always that jumping off point. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there with the panel. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Javier. It's been really great to be able to pick your brains a little bit more. I am now we've got one more final presentation left, which is actually to talk about something rather exciting from our end. So let me just reshare my screen, and I'm going to be introducing my colleague, David Johnson from Digital Catapult. Thank you very much. It's late in the day. I'm going to hand over to you, and you're going to introduce the audience and all of our speakers to something rather exciting that we've got going on.
Thanks, Emily. What a great day we've had. Thank you to all our speakers today. Like Emily said, I'm David Johnson, and I'm a technologist here at Digital Catapult, looking at the creative and immersive technologies. I'm here today to talk briefly about our virtual production test stage based in Guildford. Perhaps we could start with a short overview on the video, Emily, if you've got the slide there, that'd be great.
So we're really excited to be able to launch the virtual production test stage, which is a partnership between Digital Catapult and Target 3D, supported by Innovate UK. The test stage is a space to get hands-on with the big screen, with the tracking systems, and kind of get to grips with what virtual production is all about.
So one of the things that's driving this phenomenon of virtual production is the incredible demand for new content.
So at the virtual production test stage, we have this obviously amazing screen, but we also are equipped with camera tracking, a mocap system. Partners are Target 3D, who are experts in mocap.
Our responsibility here is to set up this volume, pull all the tech together.
From the Digital Catapult perspective, it seemed to us to be really important that we could actually get our own hands-on experience and ourselves understand what the capabilities of this technology is, in order that we can actually help others and involve others and support companies and really taking advantage of the technology.
We're primarily production content partners. The benefits for the University of Surrey of being involved in this project is very similar to the benefits for the wider world. We want to find things out. We want to create some knowledge, create some experience, and be able to share that with the wider community.
Digital Catapult have got fantastic experience convening the industry. We're bringing all of this experience to the running of the virtual production test stage to help Target 3D, Surrey University and all of the partners around the UK to make the most of virtual production technologies.
As a neutral body, we're able to work with big players such as ARRI and Epic, and then small independent filmmakers and academics. It's our job to distribute those learnings and democratise technology even further.
It's a facility which is not necessarily hampered by heavy film production schedules, so there's enough time and space for people to come and use this facility, test things, report on them, and use their findings and help share those findings.
We really want to make sure that initiatives like this are available all over the country.
The potential for us to be a real global superpower when it comes to this new kind of really disruptive form of media production.
So whether you're a small independent production or a large studio, whether you're a hardware or software manufacturer and you want to learn about virtual production, you can do that at the virtual production test stage.
So that gave you a little overview from some of my colleagues about the stage. It's a modest but end-to-end facility we've set up as a joint venture with our partner, Target 3D, who, as you heard, are a motion capture and virtual production specialist. And the aims of the project, as you can see here, are to create a research studio for convergent technologies like we spoke about today, offering not just the technology, but design and support for this fast-growing area. Working first with the creative sector, but we're also looking at cross-sector uses too. But it feels like the creative sector is the best place to explore some of these challenges. We want to offer hands-on experience of these workflows and facilities for indies and practitioners, like some people on the webinar today. It was great to see the League of Legends video earlier, but we're aware that stages and productions of that scale just aren't available to everyone. and are not the right thing to be doing for every production as well. We want to offer training and development opportunities, and ultimately, really, we want to position the UK as the best place to create and innovate in this area. And as you heard on the video, we're really keen to share this with the wider industry and ecosystem. Next slide, please, Emily. So we talk a lot about convergent technologies, and today's webinar has been largely focused on them, I guess. Our VP stage, like you heard, has capabilities like LED screens, motion capture, real-time engines, cinema cameras, tracking, live streaming. And we're really interested in areas of research projects or practitioners that are working in this general space, including new forms of capture, both audio and visual, processing and distribution of content. And we're kind of open to working with anyone, really. So look, if you're interested in talking about our facility, you want to come down and visit, you want to do some research with us, or you've got a project you're looking to run, either research or kind of near commercial, or you just want to chat, right, you want to continue the conversation, please get in touch at the email address on the slide. That's my personal email, and I will definitely get back to you, but it might take a while if we're overrun. That's all from me today. Thank you for your time. It's been a great day. And I'm just going to pass back to Emily to kind of wrap up and give some final thoughts. Emily.
Lovely, thank you very much, David. So hopefully that's really exciting for lots of people on this webinar, that there is now this facility. I know there was a question earlier that came up around what do smaller studios do when they're looking at virtual production, and how can people get their hands on the technology to learn about it and test. So that's exactly the purpose, as David said. So it would be great to hear more from you. So on that note, Max and I will just kind of wrap up. I think we heard so many very exciting points from both the panels here in terms of the growing areas of advanced content production and the metaverse at large. I think that the really key takeaways that we've just summarized here in terms of next steps, so that first of all, we are very much welcoming, as we said, all people to get in touch with us about the new studio, and we'd love to look at joint projects and R&D projects that could take place there. The 5G Festival was mentioned a few times during my panel, and as you say, this is a big collaborative R&D project that's been taking place down at the Brighton Dome with O2 and Warner Music, Sonosphere and Metropolis Studios and a bunch of others. There will be a showcase for everything that's been going on there to show off some of the various use cases that were being discussed, such as remote production between artists in different places, as well as looking at how you can actually live stream the immersive object-based audio out of venues and into people's homes. So that will be in early March with various different venues all syncing into the Brighton Dome. So keep an eye out on the website and our newsletter to hear more about that, because it hopefully will be very relevant. And Max, I don't know if you wanted to say a few last thoughts as well before we let everyone go for their evenings.
Yeah, absolutely. See, and really enjoyed both panels there, and actually good to see so much so much engagement. Really pleased with that. In terms of the first thing, I think for everyone on the call who's in the sort of content production and the ideation space, we are going to be launching this program with Niantic. The kind of official open call will go live in January, but there'll be some news in the next couple of weeks. Ultimately, there'll be up to 100 grand up for grabs for companies who've got exciting ideas in the music, advertising and tourism spaces, which is why we thought this would be a good audience for that. So if you've got amazing ideas in your back pocket for AR experiences that might leverage Niantic's platform, by all means start working them up over Christmas, because we'd love to hear them. And even if you don't win that competition, there are lots of things that Niantic can do as well. And the last one as well is that, as I mentioned, we are doing a load of work around the metaverse with the UK government, specifically BEIS, and we'll be looking to further our research agenda. Plus, we're launching an acceleration program next year, which will be themed around the metaverse. That theme and how we scope that theme is still TBC, so we'd love to speak to companies within the space. I guess that leads me to my last the last poll question. Thanks so much everyone for polling. We will send some bits. To Mary, if you could fire up the last poll question just on that last final point. Just want to know if there's anyone within the conversation who would be interested in being part of our research group and having some interviews around that, and or the acceleration program that we're running in the early part of next year. So if you guys can just knock down those answers reasonably binary there, that would be great. And I'll probably enough time. But I guess with that, we'll wrap that up. Thanks so much everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. Any final words, Emily?
No, just a massive thank you again to the APA and the BPI, and to all of the speakers that put the time in to joining us today. I know it's still a bit of an odd one with hybrid events such as webinars as well, but it's been really nice to pull everyone together and try and summarize really some of the work and R&D that's been going on over the last couple of years. So overall, thank you ever so much for tuning in. Make sure you're signed up to the newsletter, because there's going to be lots more events coming back now with Digital Catapult, and it's been a real pleasure to host this. There are some final details there, but you will get a follow-up email within the next few days anyway, with all of these things that we've been talking about. So thanks ever so much, and have a lovely evening.
Cheers, guys.